Morning, everybody. My name's Gene Coltes. I'm presiding member for the Metro Outer Development Assessment Panel this morning. I'm joined by Mr. Birch, Leo Donoghue, and Shire President Rob Coles and Councillor Mack. I'd like to declare the meeting open and acknowledge traditional owners and pay respect to elders past and present of the land on which the meeting is being held. Now, during the course of the meeting, panel members may refer to their technical devices such as phones and iPads. This is just to assist them in considering the information before them. And the meeting is being recorded with and live streamed in accordance with Regulation 42A. Item 2 on Part A of the agenda. Apologies, I have none. Item 3, members on leave of absence, there are none. Item 4, I will note the previous minutes of meetings that are available on the DAF website. Now, in regard to the order of business, we have decided as a panel to deal with item 5.1 first. So I will ask for a mover and seconder for that. Moved Mr. Birch, seconded Leo Donoghue. All those in favour? Thank you. The reason for that is there's only one presenter on that item, and I believe we should deal with that item quicker than the other one, with the number of presenters and questions likely to be asked on item 3.1A and B. That being the case, we do have a presenter on that item, Mr. Josh Watson from Planning Solutions. Josh, would you like to make the presentation, please?
Got the declarations of interest.
Oh, sorry. Yes, there are a couple of declarations of interest from Shire President Coles and yes, Councillor Shane Mack.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh yes, sorry, they're clearly familiar with the item, and it was dealt with previously, wasn't it? Oh, sorry, the okay, and all the members are familiar with the items on the agenda. Thank you. Which is 5.1. Yes, Josh.
Well, thank you, panel members, and thanks for bringing this one forward today. I'm Josh Watson from Planning Solutions and speaking in support of the reconsideration of the mixed commercial development at lot 806 Southwestern Highway in Byford. I've also got Ben and Borbart from Transcore who can be available to answer any traffic related questions following my presentation today too. Firstly, I'd like to thank the Shire of Serpentine, Jarrahdale, the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage and Main Roads for working collaboratively through the various issues as a result of the previous determination. And I think that's evident in the recommendation to the panel today. By way of background, the Development Assessment Panel approved the development on the 14th of November in 2023. A number of these conditions from that approval had significant impact on the ability to actually to activate the and proceed to development. So we lodged an appeal, and it just gave us the ability to work through these a bit more with the Shire, Department of Planning and Main Roads. And then following mediation, we implemented a number of updated plans and documentation. And ultimately we resolved that we provide updated plans to improve the materiality of the fast food outlet along Southwestern Highway. In addition, we made minor amendments to Development Building 2, which is the main big building in the middle. And we also made some improvements to retaining wall colours and textures and fencing. In addition to that, we did a considerable amount of traffic reporting to respond to Main Roads WA concern, and also to demonstrate the acceleration lane was not needed as part of this development. And we were able to confirm that via Main Roads response for supportive response to that. And finally, we had a number of procedural conditions which we were able to give some further information on and modify the wording to ensure that procedurally we can actually implement the development in a logical manner. So with these matters in mind, yeah, fully supportive of the Shire's updated RAR to the panel. We do request one change to that, which is condition S. We think that's more appropriately provided as an advice note. So it relates to Main Roads permit for works within the road reserve. And it states Main Roads approval for that. So we acknowledge and know that that is required, but it's more appropriately an advice note rather than a condition of the planning approval, because it does require a third party approval, but it's basically the construction process that you need to go by anyway. Other than that, fully supportive, as I've said, and thank the Shire Department of Planning Main Roads for working through this. And I think this will be a great addition for the Byford locality, and we look forward to sort of proceeding with construction and development of this one.
Thank you, Josh. Panel members, any question of Mr. Watson? No. Council, Andrew, are you happy with that condition S to be? I note that advice note 1 is similar wording to that, so rather than shift that into no objection from the officers, we could possibly look at deleting condition S.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I just note it was a condition requested by Main Roads WA.
Right.
It's stating something that has to occur under law anyway.
Yep.
So I guess there's always funny situations where Main Roads request conditions, generally implied that we have to carry across those conditions. Alternatively, a separate RAR is often required by the Department of Landlands and Heritage, because they can technically be an argument that we're not reflecting the position expressed by Main Roads in their submission. So we have the Main Roads representatives here today. Is a condition that their submission ultimately requested. If they were comfortable with it being removed on the basis that permit is required for works within a Main Roads road, the Shire would have no objection to that.
Okay, Main Roads, we have a representative here. I mean, that's covered by Main Roads or legislation anyway, isn't it? That or regulation that you can't work in road reservation.
Just to clarify, could you read out the actual?
The condition is no works are permitted within the South Western Highway Road Reservation without obtaining a working on roads permit from Main Roads. Now, that as a condition is requires a third party to the approval, which is not permitted. But the advice note that's there says the applicant is advised to liaise with Main Roads for the approval of any proposed works on the South Western Highway Road Reserve. So telling them the same thing without being a third party condition to the approval.
I think I've spoken to you. I think that's satisfied that can be an advice note.
It can be, okay. All right, well, we're happy with that. Good, thank you.
They're aware of the requirements.
Yes, yes, they certainly are. Okay, all right, well, thanks very much. Are there any other questions of either Mr. Watson or the officers? Mr. Trossick? If not, then panel members, we do have a recommendation for approval to set aside the previous or varied conditions of the DAP application, and we can discuss that. Do I have a mover and a seconder, please?
I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, councillor.
Condition S.
Okay. And seconder?
I'll second it.
Lee, thank you. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Councillor Mack, do you wish to speak to the item, please?
Look, I think a lot of work went in. I think it shows it's very obvious that the applicant and the Shire have worked together to come to an arrangement here. This is the second time it's been back. I think the amendments that are being requested here are in accordance with what we'd like. I am a little bit nervous around the road, the acceleration lanes having been removed, but take it on board that Main Roads request to change the traffic management and their advice saying that we don't need the acceleration lane. So with that, I think the right work has been done and it warrants our approval.
Okay, thank you. Lee, do you wish to speak?
Oh, look, I haven't got much more to add. It would appear that the outstanding concerns have been addressed, that sub-condition S definitely needs to go. It's an advice, in my opinion. I can't see how you could clear it. So, yeah, I'll be supportive, subject to S being deleted.
Okay, thank you. Any other members wish to speak to the item? The mover and seconder have agreed to the deletion of condition S, so I don't think we need to do any amending motion on that, do we?
Yeah, just wondering,
Birch.
just for absolute clarity, we could shift that condition and add the sentence to advice note 1. Any doubt? So it would still be advice note, but we don't need a new advice note. We just add the sentence after the liaison with main roads. It's not entirely necessary. It's just
Yeah, okay,
just
look,
clarity.
I'm happy to second that.
Okay,
Well,
you agree with that? So in other words, the condition S is the second sentence of advice note.
yeah.
Okay.
The mover agree with that?
Yes.
I'm supporting the recommendation as put forward. It's a very good example, I think, of the transition from a rural community to an urban community, which is happening at some pace.
Okay, thank you. And I too support the proposal, having been involved in from the first meeting and at SAT. I know a lot of work's been gone with it, and cooperation of Main Roads and the applicants, and of course the Shire officers. It's, in my opinion, a good outcome, and I think the scale of the development will assist the community, the local community, to have far better amenity in terms of the provision of shopping facilities, the bulky goods shopping facilities in that area. So with that, if anyone else wish to speak to the item? If not, then I'll put the item to the vote. All those in favour with the item. Thank you. It's unanimous. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you all.
We will now move back to the agenda. This stage for presenters who present themselves to the microphone or cameras. And we've got Mr. Fudge and Anne Walsh from Main Roads. Have we got two presenters or just the one? Oh, sorry. You can go up and just a colleague up there and.
Member, just to clarify, before we start the presentations, I will be talking generally to the proposal, and my colleague Anne will be talking more detail to the access on the southwestern highway.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. It clarifies that.
Good morning, presiding member and panel. My name is Chris Fudge from Main Roads. Main Roads supports the development of the site from a land use perspective, however objects to the proposed direct access left in only from Southwestern Highway. In regard to the subject site, Main Road's position on direct access to and from the highway has been consistent since circa 2018 in order to maintain a safe and efficient operation of the road on Southwestern Highway. Main Roads have supported previous development applications on the subject site. the previous 2018-2019 applications were configured and approved with no direct access to and from the highway. Vehicle access in these instances was taken from Larson Road and George Street. It is noted previous approvals on the subject site included service station, motor vehicle repair, motor vehicle wash and retail land uses. These approvals also included the requirement for a left turn pocket at the approach to the intersection of Larson Road and South Western Highway. As such, it has been demonstrated that the subject site can function without direct highway access with the car-orientated, traffic-intensive land uses, including access by fuel tankers required for the service station. From a land use perspective, it can be argued that the subject proposal represents an intensification on the previous development approvals, with the addition of 2 fast food outlets in lieu of the retail land use. The local government acknowledged in their RAR that the service station and motor vehicle wash land uses typically require larger sites to accommodate development given their scale and typical use by larger vehicles. As such, it can be contested that the subject proposal is required to work even harder to achieve safe and efficient vehicle access, egress, and the movement of vehicles to the site. The proposed development has the potential to be a major traffic generator. The application proposes direct lift-in only access from the highway and full movement access to Larson Road. In regard to DC Policy 5.1, the proposal does not include lower order road vehicle access from George Street. This is on the understanding this component was removed following receipt of an objection from the PTA. Main roads are of the position that the PTA's concerns can be suitably addressed by the proponent and are surmountable, a point acknowledged by the local government in their RAR. The local government identify a George Street access as an important frontage to the service commercial zone precinct south of Rockland Road. Additionally, main roads do not deem the temporary closure of George Street to facilitate the construction of the adjoining pedestrian footbridge a suitable justification for the support of permanent direct access from the highway. In terms of the South Western Highway, my colleague will now discuss the safety risks associated with the proposed left-in only access.
Judge.
So while the crossover is existing, based on the information provided by the applicant, there are currently no vehicles that enter or exit out of the subject lot. The proposed crossover is merely rationalising permitted movements. However, it is still introducing a significant increase in volumes of this crossover. Contrary to the policy objectives of DC 5.1 and draft operational policy, which is to improve traffic flow and safety by minimising vehicle access on regional roads. So Main Roads does not support the access from South Western Highway due to the following reasons. 1, the proximity of the filling positions for the fuel station, as well as the entry to the fast food outlet to the south to South Western Highway has not been fully considered and no queuing analysis has been undertaken. Any queuing that extends near the crossover can have significant impact on South Western Highway, especially given it is only a single lane each direction at this location. The applicant has advised that the left-in crossover is required to allow the fuel tankers to circulate the site. However, no swept path analysis has been provided to illustrate a 19-metre fuel tanker entering by the crossover and manoeuvre within the site to its indicative fill point has been provided. And previous assessments have shown even with a full movement crossover on South Western Highway, fuel tankers were entering from the north. Third point, the development proposes to use signs and pavement marking to limit the permitted movements at the crossover, which is almost 13 metres wide. The signage is proposed to be located on private land, which is not enforceable. Additionally, the current proposal does not physically restrict left out or right in movements. Given the width of the crossover, it is highly unlikely it will be used for left in movements only. Fourth point, in accordance with Austroad's Guide to Road Design, using a design speed of 70 kilometres per hour, so 10 over the speed limit, a car requires 70 metres to decelerate to turn into the development. The vehicles turning left into the development will begin to decelerate at approximately intersection of Southwestern Highway with Walters Road, as shown in the bottom right corner there. Vehicles turning right at Walters Road will be accelerating into gaps in traffic and may instantly require to hit the brakes due to vehicles turning left into the development. This is a safety risk, especially considering the composition of light and heavy vehicles. Please note that a design speed of 70 kilometres has been used. The 50 kilometres per hour speed is not in place at all hours of the day. Given aspects of the development is proposed to operate 24/7, and should these electronic speed signs fail, a posted speed of 60 kilometres should be considered. Now, just to finalise, both local government and WFPC assessing officers has also identified in their RARs risks with allowing left-in crossover from Southwestern Highway, and has recommended road improvements, specifically a deceleration lane to improve safety. However, this also poses several issues. So the turning pocket, as shown with the deceleration in distance, will be opposite a side road, which is Walters Road. The proximity of the existing crossover to the south, significant service relocation that is required, and lastly, it does not align with future plans. So that is the conclusion of our presentation. Should you have any questions?
Okay, thank you. Panel members, any questions at this stage?
Just confused on the speed limit. Is it 50 or is it 60?
So it's 50 for most periods of the day. So it's utilising a electronic speed limit sign, and then outside of those hours is down back to 60
What's the period?
hours.
What's the period?
It's 7:30 a.m. to 10 p.m.
There wouldn't be many cars on the road after.
However, you would still consider that at other periods of the day, it's at 60.
The other question I have is that this is just not as a traffic engineer. I'm not a traffic engineer, but just as a driver. But if I'm looking to fill up, I expect to be able to enter from the street the service station faces. Do you consider that if people can't find that and then they suddenly find they have to enter from Larson Street, they might then indeed brake suddenly and they find that that's actually the way to get into the petrol station?
You would assume that with a proposal like this, there would be a signage strategy that's accompanying it. Additionally, I think locals would know where the access would be. I think the main point that I'm trying to get with that, with the fuel station being so close to the Southwestern Highway, is the fact that the queuing has not been considered.
Internally?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, is there a proposal for traffic lights at Larson Road at any stage?
Not as part of the
Main roads.
current plans.
See, I did.
Yes, just go ahead. Mr. Lynch.
You said in your submission that it doesn't meet the requirements of SPP 5.1, and yet on the planning, assess the report, they don't, it's their policy, in effect, they don't agree with that. How do you rationalise?
2 seconds. Yeah, I mean, in short, yes, the summary on the back of the WAPC. Page 9 of the WAPC RAR, as to say, in particular regard for this application, it should be noted that the objectives set out in DC Policy 5.1 include ensuring that vehicle access to regional roads and the type of abutting developments is controlled and conforms with sound planning principles. I mean, in this instance, it can be obviously contested that the site is afforded 2 other frontages to Larson and George Street. Obviously, in my part of the presentation, it's clear that George Street hasn't been explored, or it was initially, and it was taken off the table. However, really this site, being a corner site, does have the ability to provide access points that are safe from lower category roads, lower order roads. So And obviously what we're flagging here is obviously the safety concerns with the left-in proposal from the highway. So and also the next bit says improving traffic flow and safety on all regional roads, either new or existing, by minimising the number of junctions and driveways.
I understand all that, but they've supported the application with that access. So they don't have clearly they don't hold the same.
Yeah, so in answer to your question, Main Roads is not on the same page as the Commission in regards to TC policy.
Yes, there was a comment made that the function of South Western Highway will change significantly with the extension of Tonkin Highway further south. Your point on that, do you agree or disagree, or how do you? A lot of the heavy traffic at the moment is there, both the volumes of passenger cars and heavy vehicles are there because there's no alternative to South West Highway.
Yeah, I mean, there's the figure of 30% being put out there. You know, I suppose that could be debated on the percentage that will be. Well, you will see a reduction. I suppose there will be some impact with that in reduction. However, which I don't think I've seen too much of it, definitely in the two RARs, was any talk to actual development in the area. As we know, SG's got quite a lot of development going on, and there's not really too much that talks to a counterbalance sort of argument to, like, yes, you will see some reduction with Tonkin, but with further developments popping up in the area, you know, how is that considered in the future, you know, as part of your forecast and modelling? Yeah. So I think I can't sit here and say 30% is bang on the money or not, but I think you could probably look to a bit more of a conversation there and look at the modelling regards development in and around that area. I mean, we do see a number of applications from SJ, and it is, you know, there's quite a lot of development happening in that area. I mean, you've got Bideford train station just down to the southwest. So I think, yes, there's some merit in a reduction, but then also I think you could also look to flesh out that modelling with a bit more consideration for development.
Thank you. That answers my question. Okay, are there any other?
So I just had one more question in relation to speed limit. Weekend before last, I went down to Pemberton for the weekend, and I noticed that a lot of the towns I went through had 40 speed limits through the Bridgetown, I think was one, probably Boynup, Dardanup. Is that the main roads in position, or is that something that the local shires would?
I can't speak to each and every case. There's some cases where it is a request from local government. I'm not too sure in terms of main roads. We do manage significant amount of roads.
Well, I think it's the same highway, and main roads controls the whole.
Yes, and there would be involvements from main roads. That would be our speed zoning teams. I can't speak to that directly. Sorry.
Just on that, so you can get a request from a shire so that's how it works. Is that the process? They request that it be 40 through their town side as opposed to 50 or 60?
Yeah.
And then Main Road assesses that and says yes or no, is that correct?
Yes.
I mean, I've become a little bit confused now, I think, from that. So is Main Roads actually supporting the entry from South West Highway or not supporting it? They're not supporting it. So no. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So can I ask a question? In the RAR at paragraph 5, subsection 2, it talks about a traffic signal. Now, I'm not a road person. A traffic signal, is that a stop sign, a give way sign, left turn sign, traffic lights? What is the actual definition of a traffic signal?
In this context, it would be traffic lights.
The question was asked before about traffic lights at last, and you said no.
No, I think she said that Main Roads aren't proposing.
Main Roads aren't proposing.
Yeah, so the city in their RARs put forward, there's a dual, obviously there's a condition that talks to the deceleration lane.
Yes.
And then also the
traffic,
yeah,
which is traffic lights.
Yeah.
Okay, any further questions? Thank you. Oh, sorry, yes.
We'll have one more, and it's just in regards to the, I was gonna call it banking, I think you sort of said about the traffic build-up coming out of and your main concerns then are that they're gonna flow back onto South West Highway to bank up the traffic there?
There's not been any information provided to kind of talk to that. So at this stage, that's an unknown, and just given the proximity of the fuel station and the fast food to that crossover, to South Western Highway, it's currently a concern for main roads.
So you're talking about entry into the sort of canopy to fuel up when, they've got a super special on fuel prices, and people come from far and wide to take advantage of it, and there's various examples around where traffic actually does spill back into the road pavement. So that's part of your concern. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Sorry, Mr. Presiding Member, can I ask another question? And I don't know whether our friends from the main roads can answer this. I'm just looking at the Part B documentation, and there's actually a United service station, which is just further south from the application we're talking about, and that has what you're talking about, no access directly from the service station onto South West Highway. It's got a side street, which I can't remember the name of. If I'm getting wrong. Have you looked at that as comparison to what this application is? Because that's a service station. It's got the drive-through, a chicken treat, and it has access directly not from South West Highway. Is there any comparison there that you've looked at, or main roads?
Yeah, I don't know the background as in whether that was the original plan of when the application was first lodged with no access on the South Western Highway, but obviously that is, has similarities with the subject site, as in it has access available from lower order roads, and it has been utilised in those instances, yes. And as previously in my part of the presentation, previous versions or previous approvals on this subject site have included a service station, and they've had access from Lawson and George. And obviously you've got the queuing that we've talked about, and you've got the fuel tankers as well, and that access and traversing through the site. So as I say, I feel like this proposal needs to work even harder because you have those two fast food tenancies.
And a subsequent question, if I can, through the chair. I guess for me, in my very simple eyes, the difference with United is dual lane there, where this application only has a single lane on South West Highway. From a traffic management point of view, having single lane, dual lane, what does that mean for access off the highway?
In this instance, I don't know if I can answer that straight away. Sorry.
Well, I suppose one thing is that there would be a deceleration lane, which makes up the second lane. And,
yes, okay, that's yeah.
Yeah. So.
And sorry, third question, if I can, or fourth, maybe.
Please go right ahead. Here for this.
If the position was adopted of no access from South West Highway, I don't know if it's mutually exclusive or not, but would you suggest as main roads professionals there'd be no requirement for traffic lights then at Larson and South West Highway?
It would need to be assessed. At this stage, that has not been, because it was not proposed by the applicant. And sorry, just going back to your previous question, in terms of the difference, like further to, it's just that separation of the turning movements from route movements. So we've got single lanes location, like anyone that's turning left into that proposed development will be also braking and impacting those that's going straight through the regional traffic. It was highlighted in the WPC's area.
Okay, yes, please follow through.
I'm curious, main road's position, we're talking about a town centre here, on a highway. What's main roads? Do you want to get cars through there as quickly as possible, or is it for when you've got a town centre, you need access to the shops and whatever might be there? And I would have thought you talk about safety. I would have thought that the faster you get the cars through, the less safe it is. Okay, there might not be interfering movements, that can actually serve as a traffic calmer, if you like. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Sorry, could you repeat the question, please?
I think I know where you're coming from. I mean, you're saying when you think of safety, your first thing is probably speed, but then you've got people are probably going to pause and go at slower speeds generally when there's a bit more going on in the area, and you have to give more thought to it. I mean, I think safety is also, and again, I'm not saying I'm professional on this, but there's obviously concern for road users not really understanding what's going on, because like Anne said, you've got someone who's wanting to actually pull out of the side road to the east, and you've got people slowing down. So I can see whereby in slower speed environments in the CBD, they've done different patterns at roundabouts or junctions to sort of assist with calming and also pedestrian activity and things like that. But I don't necessarily see that personally is the case in this instance.
Okay. Any further questions? If not, do we at this stage want to get any clarification from Secon roads?
I can, please.
So I think if
Remember, and I haven't obviously given any forewarning to Mr. Trossing in regards to this, but it's just interesting the comment that our friends from Main Roads.
Just before, Andrew, do you want to sit at the? Or a few more questions, don't you?
Just in relation to the proposition I put towards Main Roads for Mr. Trossing, if he can answer, the history of the United Service Station, which is just south of this proposed development. Why the access for that one was granted, not off the highway and through the side street. I don't know if that's appropriate. Mr. Trossing can answer that through the chair.
Yes, no, that seems okay.
Thank you for the question through you, Mr. Chairman. That applicant tried extensively actually to open up Evans Way onto Southwest Highway for a full movement. In fact, to this day, he's still proclaiming as much as he can that his business is being hampered by the fact that he's only got a left in, left out onto Southwest Highway. So compared to Larson Road, it's a full movement intersection. We at the Shire, whether I indicate my position now as per the RAR or later on, we have significant concerns without two aspects, without traffic signal upgrade to Larson and Southwest Highway, and the left turn entry onto into the premises from Southwest. We say town centre, Southwest Highway be very different to how drivers drive further south of 110 kilometres open area in a high speed environment. We say like Pinjarra, like Harvey, that Southwest Highway presents as a very different thing through townships, and we believe that the notion of preserving it as a highway is very contradictory to actually how the planning framework is presenting that infrastructure through its town centre. So for us, it's less about the concerns as per the entry off Southwest Highway. It's much greater about the concerns of the Larson Road, Southwest Highway intersection. And what we say is not being correctly represented in the information in the report.
Okay. The deceleration lane and the intersection, they're things that obviously our main roads have to grant approval for. What happens if they don't?
Thank you, Chairman. I guess that will come down to a question as to whether a condition by the panel is deemed reasonable, has a proper planning purpose and fairly relates to the proposal.
Yeah.
It's obviously very common that conditions are imposed requiring infrastructure improvements which relate to a main roads asset. I think the Planning and Development Act and the scheme provides for a decision made under those documents to ultimately there's an expectation that they would be implemented. Main Roads have been able to participate in that planning process, I guess, through making a submission. It's ultimately my expectation would be they would be required to implement a decision of the panel. I am not aware of, whilst we had sort of a recent situation with the Humage matter up on the intersection of Nicholson Road and Thomas Road, which did come via the Development Assessment Panel, that very different facts to this situation. That was about two decisions made very close to one another that didn't have a degree of synchronicity about how access onto Main Roads, Thomas Road was going to occur. We're sort of saying with this one that we believe the development precipitates certain infrastructure changes to be able to directly precipitates infrastructure changes to be able to operate as per the information submitted. Main Roads would ultimately, if the decision was a certain intersection improvement, there would be essentially a process to go through that. I don't believe it would be necessarily something that would be capable of improved.
Okay. All right, thank you. Yes, councillor.
Thank you, Director. I just wanted to ask, given the concerns of queuing coming out of this, do you feel satisfied that the conditions that you have here would actually address the internal design for queuing, or do you think that it would be worthy of additional recommendation? So to say under condition C or D under the RAR, that it be added in to suitably show queuing problems within the development?
Thank you for the question through you, Mr. Chair. The concerns about queuing haven't, I guess, been reflected in the application details. The environment is a 50 kilometre through the town, a low speed environment with development becoming increasingly intensified along the way. I feel driver behaviour should expect the need to be slowing down. If there was a requirement, or if there was some queuing that was occurring, it would be, I guess, short-lived in terms of the extent of it. We've all seen highways where service stations, say, Canning Highway, which often will have queuing, Manning Road, which will often have some queuing associated with the Shell service station there. Importantly, the environment being a 50 kilometre road puts in place, I think, a lot more safety than, say, what Manning Road is through there, which is a 70 kilometre road. So I think that environment, if it was on an open stretch of 110 kilometre highway, certainly I would take a different position on the concerns around safety, but I think the expectation of driver behaviour through Byford should be very different to what they expect outside of Byford.
Follow up.
Yes, please.
So I guess at the examples that you've given there of other areas that do queue would appear to me to be dual lane roads.
Yeah.
With this being a single lane road, do we see any potential there for an impact of that actually blocking the full access of that road?
I think that sort of drives at the importance of that deceleration lane. Yep. And it's part of I guess, a more comprehensive design for that whole intersection as well.
Another question I have is there a proposal to put dual carriageway in that section of South Western Highway? I think I asked the question.
I was not being aware of any.
I just thought
work, 10-year plan.
Seems to be quite a wide road reserve there, so there seems to be potential to do that. But anyway, that was just a.
There's an MRS reserve, isn't there, on the?
There is a reservation there. Is that reservation, the MRS reservation there, specifically for commercial development, or was it on the previous proposal to have Larson Road going all the way through to the west?
Sorry, could you repeat?
Well, there's a road widening reservation, Larson and Southwest Highway. I don't know if you know the background towards it, but it seems to be that if Larson Road is no longer going further west, perhaps that may not have been required at this stage, even though it would probably help this development.
Yeah, so based on the current future plans, there is a widening proposed there. However, I take your point that that would have been previously considering Larson to go straight through to the west.
Yep.
So there's no plans at the moment to widen. There's nothing in your 5-year plan.
Nothing in the 4-year. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We'll hear from the proponents. Thanks very much at this stage. We may ask supplementary questions later, but staying.
Next.
Madam Boardbar. Boardbar, Mr. McGlue and Mr. Hitting. You can move around this way a little bit. Don't crowd the administrative support. Here we are. Mr. Boardbar, you've been listening to a lot of discussion on the road widening, and that perhaps you can enlighten us on some of the questions we had asked specifically, but in general, please make your presentation.
Chairman, I think there's a hearing out going first.
Okay, happy for that.
Thank you, Mr. Presiding Member. Perhaps just firstly, we weren't made aware of the presentation by Main Roads. So it's the first time we've seen or heard the presentation. Perhaps if Mr. Boardbar can have a couple extra minutes to respond to those items.
Yes, well, that would be.
We weren't notified. That was just one of my steps. Okay. Thanks.
But I'm sure you did anticipate their concerns about.
Yes, and that's well documented, of course. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for the opportunity to present. This matter is a proposed service station, 2 fast food outlet, motor vehicle repair and motor vehicle wash development, 3 Larson Road in Byford. During the course of the assessment of the application, an amended proposal was put forward. The original proposal obviously was full movement access from South Western Highway, Larson Road and George Street. Now, in response to the PTA submission, George Street access was removed and the access to South Western Highway was modified to left in only. We have reviewed the documentation in the report. It's a recommendation for approval from the Shire, which we generally support. And as contained in my submission, there are a number of conditions which we oppose. There's a recommendation for approval from the WPC, which we generally support. However, there's a condition there also which we oppose. We do, however, support the overarching position of both authorities in that the Shire and the Planning Commission support the development with left-in access for the Western Highway. Have not accepted the Main Roads position in relation to this. We thank the Shire and the Planning Commission for this position. In relation to the Shire of Serpentine Jarrahdale's recommendation, Condition 5 in a general sense relates to intersection upgrades and a deceleration lane located wholly within the Metropolitan Region Scheme Primary Regional Road Reserve. So this is a case where the Shire recommendation perhaps should only relate to development approval considerations under its local planning scheme, as the Planning Commission have been tasked with writing their own report with respect to the MRS. So the DPLH and the Planning Commission is solely responsible for forming a recommendation for development and considerations for the MRS. And the Shire's recommendation, in our view, should be confined to the zoned area of land plus any abutting local roads. And that's the reason why this application is a dual responsible authority report application. So we think that condition 5 generally should be removed from the Shire's recommendation. As set out in my submission, we provide additional operational and technical reasons as to why the deceleration lane and the signalisation option should be removed from consideration. Low speed environment, the fact that there are physical impediments in the road reserve to complicate a deceleration proposal. As shown in my submission, there are a number of physical infrastructure items, a power pole, telecommunications infrastructure, a hydrant, footpath relocation. All of that will need to be relocated at considerable cost. So notwithstanding that we don't believe there is any warrant for a deceleration lane, there are other issues associated with even considering that. In addition to that, there would be a requirement for main roads to be approached for an application for works, which, in the circumstance of this one, the main roads may not even choose to approve such application. So there's uncertainty with even imposing a condition like deceleration. So, in these circumstances, we believe that there's no certainty with even imposing this requirement. In terms of signalisation, there is no real detail in the report as to any type of design or layout of a signalisation option. There's no reason to, in our view, to have a signalisation option solely borne on an applicant for this development. Just doesn't. There's no need and nexus for signalisation for one development proposal. So it fails the need and nexus test in our view. And Benham and Alex will expand upon that, of course, in other areas. And just to close up on my submission, given we've only got a couple of minutes, the condition for public art, we asked the panel to amend that proposal, the condition 8 public art proposal, to allow the proponent to consider providing a monetary contribution rather than physically proposing public art on site. The Shire's public art policy allows for either providing it physically or providing a cash contribution. So we'd ask that the condition 8 be amended to provide both of those options. It's currently worded to only require a physical installation of public art. And then lastly, condition 16 of the Shire's report talks about the flipping of the southeastern fast food outlet to have the drive-through on the western side. As explained in my submission, flipping it like that would mean that a person driving in their vehicle wouldn't be able to access the pay and pick up windows because they'd be having to access their passenger side windows in order to pick up their order. Fast food outlets and drive-throughs have to operate in a clockwise manner, unless you're in the United States, of course. So simply flipping the fast food outlet, as suggested by the Shire, simply does not work from an operational perspective. So there really is no reason as to why that should happen anyway. The analysis has been done that, and the design is there to provide adequate queuing capacity in the drive-through. There's a dual lane drive-through in that location. And if required, if there is any concern with the panel about queuing, of course, the panel can ask for a condition requiring a queue analysis if need be. Benham can talk to that point a little bit more perhaps, but the design has been done and analysis has been done to suggest that there is no queuing issue with respect to that. Condition 16 to be deleted. And then just flowing on to the Planning Commission's recommendation, condition 1 should reflect a 4-year timeframe to be in alignment with Shire's recommendation for 4 years. Currently it's reflected as being a 2-year approval timeframe. And then condition 3, obviously, of the Planning Commission recommendation is the deceleration lane, which I've previously addressed, because that's very much the same as the Shire's recommendation. Benham and Alex also talked to as well. Any questions? Otherwise, perhaps at the end of our presentation.
Yes, okay. Well, we'll just leave it for the time being. And Mr. Broadbow, you wish to make your presentation now?
Thank you and good morning, First of all, I think we need to acknowledge that the development of this nature requires two crossovers for a successful operation. The frontage on Larson Road is not wide enough for us to have two crossovers on that road. And because of the PTA's opposition and the streetscape, the footbridge, on-street parking proposed on George Street, we are not permitted to have a new, and the key point is a new crossover on George Street. And I disagree with our colleagues at Main Roads' comment that the issues with PTA can be addressed, we negotiated, we discussed it with PTA, and it cannot be addressed. That's why we reverted to the existing crossover on Southwestern Highway that we do have a legal right to retain and use, be it in a significantly downgraded format for a left-in only crossover. Now, our colleagues at Main Roads' opposition to that crossover based on two key areas. One is safety, one is policy. In terms of safety, I think the comments provided by our colleagues ignores two critical factors. One, I think, came out of the questions of the panel members that the now funded Tonkin Highway extension, which is due to commence next year, is construction, which it's designed, that project is designed to divert traffic from the town centre of Byford on Southwestern Highway onto Tonkin Highway. And this is regional traffic, this is freight traffic, this is heavy vehicle traffic. So the traffic volumes we expect will be significantly different on this section of Southwestern Highway through Byford Town Centre. And second point, which has been ignored, is the Byford train station, which is due for construction next year. And naturally, that ability for the residents of Byford who work in Perth, they have to drive now, a vast majority of them. Well, they will, and they, because of that, they are using Southwestern Highway now. Now we'll have Tonkin Highway extension, we have Byford train station. So there would be significant changes in the mix and level of traffic volumes on Southwestern Highway on this location. The other aspect of safety is the environment. Now the environment is a low speed environment. You got a 50 km/h speed. Now it is 7 to 10 p.m. That covers the road network peak hour, the absolute peak patronage to this site. And it is a town centre environment. I did mention in my submission that between Abernethy and Larson Road, there are 9 public road intersections at the moment. Only one of them has got a left-hand lane. None of the crossovers, including crossovers to the shopping centre and all the crossover north of Abernethy Road, none have got a left-hand lane. You just don't provide left-hand lanes in a city centre environment, in a low speed environment. And the issue of the warrants is, quite frankly, is a fair fee, because with respect, because you don't just apply the warrants black and white. You look at the site context, that where are you applying that Ostro's warrants. By the way, the thresholds are so low that if you apply that to this section of Southwestern Highway, virtually every intersection, every crossover, we need to have a 10 line. So the warrant needs to be looked at within context. Now, the other objections are based on policy. A number of policy referred to with respect are not relevant to Main Road, are not their policy. And others who are managing those policies are satisfied that the development satisfies those policies, including WPC 5.1 policy.
I'll remind you, you are on the time. I'm being very generous with your
I've
time.
just got two more quick points to make. Thank you.
Okay.
With respect to Main Road's own policy, with respect that policy hasn't been applied correctly. If you look at our colleague's submission of 19th of June, it keeps stating, referring to the section of the policy for a new crossover. We're not proposing a new crossover. The circumstances for a new and existing crossover is completely different. Secondly, their policy, never in that policy says that an existing policy, be it substandard, be it out of place, being in the worst place in the world, should be removed. There's nowhere in that policy says an existing policy should be removed. And the only thing that policy says for an existing policy, depending on the circumstances, that they may need to be relocated or upgraded, etc. The last point I want to make, if I may, is with respect to the queue analysis and queue concerns that has been discussed. This issue, frankly, has never been raised before. We do have a methodology, and I think panel members who have seen my submissions that we do address and we do a queue modeling and queue analysis if this issue is raised. We did not have an issue, as Nick mentioned, the fast food drive-through is right at the other end. There's plenty of space available between the forecourt and the crossover. We did not consider queuing be an issue or queue overflow. The Shire never raised it, Main Road never raised it. The only, for the first time it was raised in Main Road's most recent submissions of 19th of June. If it would have been raised, we would have addressed the queue, but we don't believe that queue overflow is an issue. I can elaborate on that more in questions. Thank you very much for allowing me more time.
Thank you very much, Bob. Okay. Mr. McGlue, if you'd like to make your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. So the recommendations for approval in both of the RARs are supported. My submission will touch upon 4 subject matters relating to the proposed conditions, and they're really in 2 separate categories, one being administrative conditions, the other being road upgrades. So in relation to the administrative conditions, as outlined in my letter, proposed condition 1 in the Shire RAR, which refers to the MRS, that should be deleted. And proposed condition 1, Commission's RAR, which talks to the substantial commencement period, that should be modified. So my reasoning there is outlined in my letter, and I'm happy to answer any questions on those. So the more substantive issue is the road upgrades. So as outlined in my letter, in my submission, the DAP standing in the place of the Shire today cannot lawfully condition the local planning scheme development approval to require works to happen within the Southwest Highway Road Reserve. And that is because Southwest Highway is reserved under the MRS for primary regional roads. Any planning condition with respect to Southwestern Highway should therefore only attach to the MRS development approval. And with that in mind, the simple position is that condition 5 in the Shire RAR, which purports to require works within the primary regional road reserve, should not be imposed by the DAP. The requirements in the proposed conditions about upgrading the intersection at Larson and about building a deceleration lane, they are otherwise inherently uncertain. And that's for a couple of reasons. First, the conditions do not purport to require any particular design, which especially for the traffic light intersection is a significant issue. And also, these particular works do not appear to be supported at all by main roads, which creates inherent uncertainty as to whether they could ever be implemented. And it's very much akin to a condition requiring third-party approval, where the third party is unlikely to agree. And I don't share the Shire's optimism. I think main roads, if they oppose these works, they very much would be in a position to frustrate the project, which is something which should be avoided. As a final remark, the main road's position in relation to this development, it does appear to be primarily based upon their reading of planning policies rather than being based upon pure traffic engineering. And as far as I can see, the only traffic engineering opinion that is before the DAP today is that from Transcore, which supports the applicant's position on the positions. So with that in mind, in my submission, the DAP should not be imposing either condition 3 in the Commission's RAR or condition 5 in the Shire's RAR, being the conditions that talk to works in the primary regional reservation. That concludes my presentation. I hope I kept to the 3 minutes. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Panel members, questions? Mr. Birch.
Just, well, Mr. McGlue's still warm from speaking. I was just curious about your comment about the MRS approval required. There's no jurisdiction under the local planning policy. This has gone to the MRS because Main Roads didn't agree. If Main Roads did agree, I mean, I'm sure we've dealt with ones where there's been agreement and it's been a condition. Is that different?
Yes, it is different. The delegation arrangements are very complex, but I'll do my best. My understanding is that local government has the power to determine MRS development applications in these scenarios if the Main Roads recommendation is accepted. So if Main Roads puts forward a recommendation, the local government adopts it, then 2 things. Number 1, the local government is then determining the MRS application. But number 2, there's a degree of certainty that the works will actually be permitted. So there are many cases where there is that alignment and there's no issue. The issue here is that particular works are being proposed by the Shire. Main Roads doesn't want them. So the Shire isn't determining the MRS application. And meanwhile, there's significant doubt as to whether those requested works could ever occur. And I think the same could be said about any development application regarding land abutting a local government road reserve. I think there'd be many cases where conditions require landscaping or street parking or something like that. I think 99.9% of those cases would be uncontroversial because there'd be some alignment between the authority that manages the reserve and what the conditions are imposing.
Yes.
Just a question on that. You said there's a conflict is because the conditions require works, but is it the conflict not around the fact that Main Roads don't want the access point?
Both.
Yeah, sorry, I perhaps misunderstood what you said, but I just want to clarify that.
There's 2 levels of conflict. There's the question of who's.
That's why the conflict exists and why WAPC then has to put together its report. Thank you.
All comes down to the convoluted delegation arrangements.
Yes, councillor.
Sorry, I apologise if this is a silly question, but I'm a little confused on this left-hand turning lane. So is it your position then that because there is a difference between the Shire's recommendation and Main Roads, that we just approve the left-hand turning lane without the deceleration lane, where that access already is, rather than closing it off? Because for me, we got Main Road saying we shouldn't have it at all, Shire saying we can have it with a deceleration lane, and your argument then appears to be that because those 2 don't align, we should have that left-hand entrance without a deceleration lane. Am I correct in that?
Yes, that is the applicant's position. The applicant says that the development should be approved with the crossover, albeit without the need for the deceleration lane. As Mr. Boardbar submitted a moment ago, there are examples of similar developments in Byford. Whether that's acceptable from a traffic engineering perspective, that's not my area of expertise, so I won't comment on that.
I'm just interested, is it hiding or hitting? Okay, the deceleration lane is not possible to provide due to the fact that it's within a Main Roads reserve, and also there's some infrastructure. Can you just elaborate on that? I can see.
Yes, notwithstanding that works within the road reserve will require Main Roads approval, which we think is quite uncertain given the objection from Main Roads.
And then
Even if there was a supporting way to get a deceleration lane, not that we do, there's physical impediments to actually getting that on site. There's a power pole, which have to be relocated. There's a power infrastructure, telecommunications infrastructure, a fire hydrant, and path that have to be relocated. There's a number of different things that form a physical impediment and difficulty and the additional cost. If it was on the table, and we're saying it's not needed, there's complications as to getting the works approval to begin with, but there's also physical.
Can I just follow up on that?
Yeah.
So in addition to main roads, you'd need to be talking to other public utilities.
Any further questions?
Oh.
Yes,
Mr. Wardbar,
either one.
a couple of questions. Firstly, a comment was made about there's no impediment for people to go against the left in. What's your comment on controlling that?
I think there is no impediment for people driving the wrong way down a one-way street. You just provide guidance, you provide signage, you provide pavement marking, and the significantly vast majority of people will obey that. First point. Second point is there is no reason for people to do that if you look at the site layout. So if you come in from Great Eastern Highway and go to the service station, South Western Highway into the service station, you are at the Bowsers pointing north. So when you want to leave the service station, you head north, go to Larson Road and exit via South Western Highway. People naturally don't go back on themselves, go against the traffic coming in and trying to exit. Similarly with the fast food outlet, that as you come out of the drive-through facility, you are heading north again. And quite easily you can go straight up to Larson Road. So the site layout is such that it sort of doesn't encourages people to make that illegal movement, notwithstanding that adequate signage and pavement marking and guidance would be provided for users to be aware that that would be illegal to make that movement.
If someone's come from the south and they've turned in, got their burger, and there might be a temptation for them to do a right turn and go out the way they came in and head back. Although
there is, but I understand that, but there is an alternative, convenient, legal way is available to those patrons. Now, if there is someone who's come from south, gone to the burger joint and wants to go back south, that means that they probably came from home or probably work, so they are not passing through. If they are passing through, they continue north. So those people are regular users who might be working or residents nearby, and they know the setup. They know that it's not permitted to exit via that crossover. There'll be quite clear signs saying that no exit with one-way arrows coming in. So they know the way that they can legally and conveniently go back south.
nothing more physical you can do. Like you have Pelican things, but there's no, I don't understand that there's not, maybe not the opportunity.
Sure, so we can do, but once again, any physical measures will need to be done within the primary regional road reservation. So we are back to the issue that we've been discussing.
Chief, Mr. Boardbar, just I was curious that the intersection of Larson, even with its closure, would still have a very low level of service. I would have thought that would have, must be a fair bit of traffic coming across the railway line now. I would have thought that would have improved, but that hasn't changed.
It's the nature of the model or software which is used to determine the level of service. The way that software Sidra that you panel members probably heard of before.
Been around for a while.
Yes, it has been around for a while. The way that software works, it works on gap acceptance. So it works on how much gap there is on the main frontage road, in this instance, Southwestern Highway, for vehicles to be able to turn right out. If there is little gap, the software says that, and it's a fairly conservative software, obviously. The software says, no, level of service is not good. Level of service is F for that right turn movement. Now, even for that scenario, let's assume that we didn't have Tonkin Highway project. So with the Tonkin Highway project, when the traffic volumes drops on Southwestern Highway, you have more gaps. So if you then apply the software as we did with the assumption of 30% reduction, the right turns works fine, no problem, because there is more gaps. And we got the biford station as well. But let's assume none of those were around, and we had a situation where the right turn out during the peak hour, level of service was F. Now, we have to understand that that's 1 hour during the 24 hours, right? Secondly, the Sidra analysis reported on a 95 percentile. So 5% of that 1 hour, which is 3 minutes, the level of service is F. The balance of the time, the 95% balance of that 1 hour, this is 57 minutes, the level of service is better than F. The delays are better, the queues are better. That's the nature of how that software works. So we have to even the level of service F issue, we have to put it in context. That what does it mean? It means during the 3 minutes of 1 hour, during the 24 hour, we have that situation.
Thank you. Further questions? I just have one. George Street, the crossover onto George Street that you had at one stage. The PTA objected to that. What was the level of their objection or precise nature?
Okay, apparently there is a footbridge being proposed that the crossover was interfering with that footbridge. There are also some streetscapes proposed. There are some on-street parking proposed that they did not want any interference with that work. We tried to go back with PTA and negotiate, and we couldn't negotiate with them. Those issues was non-negotiable, and Shire advised that if PTA position is very important, we have to take note of that, and we did take note of that.
I noticed you said somewhere that it may be able to be reassessed later. I think yes. Yeah.
There's also the park and ride with the school has been raised. A lot of potential foot traffic to the school. Between
Well, I think the school's on the other side, isn't it?
Yeah, but there's
That's the footbridge.
That's the footbridge. Yeah.
They didn't want vehicle access interfering with pedestrian movement, school kids and such. And that perhaps differs from the previous approval that's been granted for this site, which did have a crossover. That whole Metronet project was not on the table at that time. So that's the difference.
All right, thank you.
They'd all acknowledge that their main passengers might welcome the convenience store and the fast food outlets as they get off, virtually as they get off the train. Do they look at that?
Yeah,
we have pedestrian access.
Yeah, there's pedestrian access, pedestrian connectivity.
So you'll get their money anyway. Okay, further questions, if there are any, we'd like to move along.
I've got a question for the director, Shire, if I can.
Yes,
Sorry,
yes,
member,
yes.
for me to ask that question now.
No further questions, thank you. We will now seek some advice from Mr. Trossick to make on the observed or any questions.
Thank you, presiding member. The question I have for Mr. Trossick is that condition 16 about the moving the fast food to the west, so it would be counterclockwise, not clockwise, as can I just get some clarification or thoughts behind
I
this?
support the city officer, the Shire officer to go over there. It's a bit hard to.
Okay, look, if you want to sit over the other side, panel
Sorry,
members.
it's a bit easier.
Yeah, okay. Get round and sit over there with.
Thanks.
Happy for us
You
to.
can stay there, yes. Andrew, sit yourself down anywhere.
Do you want to grab that laptop?
Okay, thank you. Yes, councillor.
Thank you, presiding members. The question was in relation to condition 16, I think it was from memory, in regards to changing the direction of the drive-through, moving it so it's orientated to the west as opposed to the original plan.
Yeah, so the intent of a condition is to, that condition was to pull away as far from Southwest Highway, the point where queuing would likely occur as people are waiting to place orders. I think it's relatively, I think there's a high degree of likelihood of that risk, noting the feedback from the applicant, as opposed to a mirroring, a simple, essentially instead of it being an east-west access fast food, making it a north-south access fast food would still solve the situation. I think for the Shire's concern is that having the dual ordering areas of the takeaway food outlet so close and so immediate to the highway would create a real risk of the queue back. So a design response would be essentially almost a 90-degree rotation, which pulls the ordering area much further inside the actual development.
If I can ask a supplementary question.
Yes, go ahead.
Through the chair. So in relation to that condition 16 that's still there, would it need to be not, I'm just trying to think in my mind, so it obviously has to be clockwise, so the right-hand side of the vehicle's at the window. Does that make sense, 16, or would we need to amend that so it's in line with physically being on the right side of the car?
Yeah, thank you for the question through you, Mr. Chairman. The condition 16 as read would need to be modified slightly. And I think the words of the Southeast fast food takeaway development being rotated 90 degrees along its being rotated 19 degrees to face east, so that the through entry points are further located away from Southwest Highway.
Thank you. No further questions. Thank you.
That would mean a redesign of where the parking is, etc. Okay.
Can I ask for a response? Mr. Hidding.
Look, it's quite a considerable design change. It means that the shop front changes, the car parking location changes. It could work. I'm not saying it can. Just have to take that on. I mean, my view be doing design changes as conditions, but this was raised a long time ago to do the flipping of the tenancy, and we objected to that based on my submission.
I suppose just to help the matter, perhaps the queuing length and the number of vehicles that are provided with space for queuing, Mr. Broadbent, is that a conservative amount of traffic to be queuing there, or is that is there well, there's always a potential that vehicles will queue across the crossover and stop traffic from turning left in. But in terms of the design, is that in accordance with Australian standards or whatever, the queuing length?
Is your question, Mr. Chairman, related to the existing proposed layout or the layout suggested by Andrew?
No, the existing proposal.
Yes. But there are two things we need to consider. First of all, with respect to risk, is that this fast food outlet is not going to be a major brand, because we've got the major brands not far to the south and not far to the north. Won't use any names. So it's not going to be one of the top tiers of fast food, which are high generators of traffic. Second thing is the guidelines for a design of the drive-through facility requires that you have 4 vehicle spaces between the ordering point and the start of the drive-through facility, and that's why you see all the new drive-through facilities which come with the dual lane provide that for space. Now, considering that it's a dual lane, you end up with that 4 space, which is 2 in each lane. So it does satisfy the guidelines and the standards. Knowing that it is unlikely to be one of the majors, so let's say if it's a chicken or if it's a Mexican fast food facility, some of those don't even operate during the mornings. They don't provide breakfast services. So, you know, a lot of these things has been considered in the design which has been proposed, and I'm sure panel members appreciate I deal with dozens of this type of projects every year. The vast majority of them are constructed or operating. And if there is an issue with any of them, the first person who call is me. And so generally these things, well, there is always a reason why you get excessive queuing, either at service stations and fast foods. And with the service stations also, there has been significant changes within the industry to avoid that. We all notice now that the discounting cycle starts a lot earlier. It starts on a Sunday or Saturday night, and then Monday, and then Tuesday. So that one day that we used to get at the selective service station and used to get chaos, that doesn't happen anymore. And some of the operators also, they do have apps, and whatever to secure your business, whatever the discounted fuel is, if you use their app, you can use that price throughout the week. So there are a number of other changes has happened since we've had these issues. So we certainly don't have a problem in terms of queuing issues and getting back onto Southwestern Highway.
Okay, thank you. Further questions? Yes, councillor.
Just have one for the director, and it was in regards to the service levels of Larson Road. Now, from living in the area prior to the railway crossing, that intersection used to be terrible, turning left and right coming out of that. And I would see it as being significantly improved since that. And I'm interested in your thoughts on how this particular proposal will affect those service levels of that road, given what we've heard before.
Thank you for the question through you, Mr. Chairman. I think this is probably one of the most difficult points that we've had with this application. The level of service as documented in 2021 was LOS of F. the level of service which has now occurred since Larson was closed. So Larson's been closed since the 1st of December last year and will never reopen again. The level of service from the Shire's assessment is LOS of A. So that intersection now is completely uncongested. All the residents who live to the north of that intersection, where they're leaving in the mornings, they're heading out via Thomas Road, via Hay Street onto Thomas Road. And then if they are heading into school in the mornings, they'll be utilising the right turnout. But in that pocket, you know, you've got about sort of 200 residential dwellings. Previously, Larson Road was servicing a vast catchment of Byford. By the fact that it's been closed, it doesn't cross the highway anymore. That sort of created to us a real challenge with the application, because you would say, in a normal sense, an LOS of A, a level of service A, becoming a level of service F by an application would create a pretty strong nexus about precipitating a change to that intersection to accommodate the acceptable level of service. F's not acceptable for Byford or within our Shire, so we would not be supportive of the development being able to take place without that intersection improvement. Certainly, you know, I do appreciate it isn't always an arguable point about the reasonableness of a condition requiring an upgrade to a regional road. I think with the recognition about what currently exists, you know, a free flow, uncongested intersection to what will exist, albeit hearing Mr. Broadbars for the 95th percentile, we are still looking at, according to the 2025 volumes, an average delay of around a minute, sort of 55, 56 seconds for traffic trying to turn out of the development and right on and head southbound along South West Highway. So we think it does warrant traffic signal to improve the safety. And I think also the notion of people coming left into the development is about creating some flexible ability to manage the intersection as well. So we see it as a bit of a relief valve for Larson Road to be allowing vehicles to come in off South West Highway. And certainly if you were exiting the facility wanting to turn right back onto South West Highway, you could see the risk of people doing the wrong thing if they saw a heavily congested intersection at Larson Southwest.
Okay.
And just one,
Yes.
mine's on a different matter if you wanted to know.
But just on that, if the development was not going to go ahead, would you still be looking for signalised intersection?
No.
So the traffic levels have dropped significantly to that point, but it's simply the fact that this development is going to go there. Okay, I'm not a traffic engineer, and it's probably a silly question, but roundabouts, are they ever considered in these situations?
Main roads may have some.
Likely to assist on that.
Well, I suppose it's a cost issue as well, because of roundabout and a set of traffic lights. But yes, Mr. Bourbeau, just quickly, if you wouldn't mind,
I
just.
think I've said in my submission that my view is that our colleagues at Main Road and the current circumstances will never approve a traffic signal at that location. It just doesn't. I've made a lot of application to traffic signals to Main Road. You need to go through a certain process, and it just won't meet the requirements that needs to be. And then also Main Roads then will say, well, investigate a roundabout, you know, you probably can fit a roundabout within the road reserve, but the main issue is going to be cost. The cost of it is going to be several million. It just kills the project. But with respect Andrew's comments, I think that level of service if and the past experience with Larson intersection. Now that we have the railway crossing removed and Larson is disconnected to the west, that's one major improvement. We don't have localized infrastructure improvement proofs, but we've got hundreds of millions of dollars of infrastructure proposed to address exactly that sort of issues along Southwestern Highway, which is the Tonkin Highway extension and the Byford train station. And once we plug that into the equation, that as we have demonstrated by the revised CITRA analysis that we've done, by the assumption of a reduction of 30% traffic on Southwestern Highway, my view is that the combination of Tonkin Highway extension and train station will reduce more. The level of service will be fine. The level of service will be C, so there won't be any issues. So we have to we can't ignore hundreds of $millions of infrastructure improvements which are proposed to address specifically the type of issues that we are talking about and avoiding the traffic signalization, not only at this intersection, at other locations along Southwestern Highway.
Okay, thank you. I think we'll move on now. Any further questions? Yes,
So I
councillor.
just wanted one follow on from the director, just in regards to condition 8 or perhaps F, and just the solution of a monetary contribution to the car rather than the actual works, and any objections to that.
Yeah, thank you for the question through you, Mr. Chairman. We encourage, well, our local planning policy does definitely prefer percent for art delivered as part of the development. We say it's the intended outcome is to look at improvement in the general public realm. We see many developments, particularly service stations, integrating public art in their development. So that's our preference. It's an option under the policy in lieu of the provision of a percent for art payment. We do have a public art master plan and a public art strategy, which does at times collect contributions from proponents who aren't necessarily willing to or wanting to deliver it themselves. But certainly our preference is to encourage proponents to integrate it into their building.
Okay.
So the answer is yes.
Yeah, so there's that can still be discussed at proponent and council level.
Yes.
Okay. So, yes, Mr. Birch.
I just want to quickly go back to the reorientation of the fast food in the south. Is there a setback if they wanted to push the building towards the street? What's the setback?
In terms of for Southwest Highway, let me just check that for the service commercial zone. And it's of course always dependent upon when we've got a triple frontage property, what we're deeming the primary, but yes, we would consider the highway as a primary orientation here. Check that under our new scheme.
While you're checking that, do anyone else have questions of the proponents or? I'm moving on, so I think we'll need to get a move on to determine the application because we haven't discussed it amongst ourselves yet. So.
Okay, so in terms of the service commercial zone, we have for setback 12 metres, secondary streets and side streets and rear setbacks all 6 metres. So primary to the
So they couldn't take it right to the street, or even if they had a driveway there.
Yeah, so
5 metres or something, it would still bump into your setback.
Essentially, if they were to crank it and shift it to run on a north-south axis rather than the current east-west axis, that would pull the four bay weighting bay would actually pull it and give a lot more storage capacity.
And that they can't. Yeah. All right. That answers my question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Further questions? No, thank you, everybody. If we, in our discussions, have any further questions, we may ask you as well. However, we now have an application here before us under item 3.1A. That we can have discussion on the matter. Do I have a mover? Seconder.
And I'd be happy to move the officer recommendation with the amendment to condition N to rotate 9 degrees.
16.
Okay, well, we can have a look at that in due course. Right, councillor Mack moves. Seconder. Okay, councillor Mack, you to speak to the item, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I certainly hear some of the arguments coming from the proponents here, but I think considerable work has been done by the staff at the Shire. I think they've put in some really good work into the traffic modelling. One of the things that I constantly heard was the introduction of Tonkin Highway going to reduce the service levels of 30%. But I never actually heard any consideration to the hypergrowth happening to the south of the Shire as well. So I think there is certainly a large element that'll combat that service level. I think what the officers have actually done for the intersections is a perfectly reasonable outcome, given that the service levels are going to be dramatically increased by this development. And I fully support the work that they have put in.
Thank you, presiding member. I concur with the comments that Councillor Mack has just made, but I guess for me the focus needs to be around condition paragraph 5, and that really is, I think, the nexus or the crux for this application. And I've noticed a couple of times, I've mentioned a couple of times in my questions that this is a single lane of Southwest Highway. We talked about other elements in the area further to the south of United Station, and one of the proponents mentioned the shopping centres further to the south as well. But I do note that in those locations there is dual lane. So I have some concerns if this was to be passed without that condition, paragraph number 5. So I think that's a critical point. I also support the comment that Councillor Mack made about, yes, notwithstanding the fact that we've got a Tonkin Highway extension coming through and that we live in a couple of years' time, and the Byford train station is part of Metronet should be open within 12 months. I think actually, and maybe this doesn't make sense for what I'm about to say, but certainly for me, I think it could actually have an opposite effect. I think there'll be more people in the Shire, and certainly within Byford, that will drive, will use Southwest Highway, will actually come into that area to park their cars at the train station, then get on the train and move further to the north, and then 42-minute train ride to the city. So I think that could actually have an opposite effect from what the proponents are saying. It might actually increase further traffic. And again, I'll echo the comments that Councillor Mack made about it being a hyper-growth area. So certainly I think condition 5 needs to be there. I support the amendments to condition paragraph 16, and the public art, whilst it hasn't been mentioned, I'm sort of a little bit on relation to that, whether it's actually put as part of the application or money. That's probably not a sticking point, but for me, the real critical point is condition 5, and that needs to remain as it is, as per the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone wish to speak to the item in support?
Yeah, I support the motion to approve the application. I can't support condition 5, apart from the fact that I don't believe it's been adequately substantiated. and there's conflicting views. I mean, I've been on these DAPs for a long time, and there seems to be this gap between main roads and the planning regulations. All the time this crops up, and it's left to us to try and sort out. I don't know why I don't know why they come to us like this. But anyway, it has. And apart from anything else, I think this condition 5 is effectively a refusal of the application. I can't see, we've got an $8 million development. I can't see the investment required to fulfil those, the requirements of condition 5 I think it would kill the development. Now, that's not a reason for refusing. That's not a reason for dropping the condition. I want to make that clear. But as I say, I believe that the arguments that have been put forward, I think they satisfy the planning criteria that we have to consider. In particular, this is a town centre, and the prime objective of a town centre should be slow traffic and access. And by denying access to all properties on the main road, that, to me, that's just contrary to a slow environment. If people can just go through and they don't have to worry about intersections or crossovers. So I think that given this, as I say, in a town centre, I think access is fundamental. The other thing is that it's almost this site. I mean, one of the comments that Main Roads made in this was in their presentation was this is an overdevelopment of the site. Now it's over a hectare. I mean, it's got a huge frontage onto South West Highway. I think it's a bit of a long bow to say it's an overdevelopment of the site. And if you look at it, the arguments that are coming from the different sides is that it's almost undevelopable because you can't have access from South West Highway, you can't have access from George Street. And if you want to take access from Larson Road, then you have to put probably at least $1 million, if not more, of infrastructure on the intersection of Larson Road and South West Highway. So we're almost in a position, between a rock and a hard place. That site could well remain vacant forever if you look at it that way. But as I say, I do come back to the fact I'm satisfied that the submission has covered off the questions that have been raised and the concerns that have been raised. Maybe sometime in the future there might be an opportunity to have an access from George Street as well, which maybe the developers or proponents wouldn't be averse to that. But again, that's something that's not we're here to consider now. In relation to condition 8, so I'm foreshadowing an amendment. In relation to condition 8, yeah, I think you should give them the option of 1%. It's pretty unusual. Very few proponents want to take up the 1%. I just don't want to do it on site, but yeah, I think that the policy says there's an option, so I don't think we can reasonably take that option away. In relation to condition 16, I'm very wary about designing something in here, and really we're talking about it's not going to be a simple exercise, but I understand the motivation behind it, and I think maybe there is scope to deal with it. There's a clear principle that you shouldn't refuse something because you think there's a better design. You've got to just deal with what's before you. But I think perhaps the queuing argument, I think there probably is scope to look at that. So I'll accept that. Condition 1, of course, is irrelevant here because the delegation doesn't apply. So I would move a motion that condition 1, 5 and 1 and 5 be deleted, and that condition 8 include the option of a 1% contribution towards public art. I think just check the condition 5 you're talking about is deletion altogether, or?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay,
So I'll move that amendment.
that's an amending motion. Do we deal with that now?
Did you want to do them separately or do you want to do them all at once?
We'll do them separately.
Yeah. So it'll just be move, delete condition 1 and vote.
All right.
Yes, thank you. That's probably a good idea, because I think there might be some discussion on.
So if you want to move the first motion to delete condition 1.
Okay, do I have a second?
Can I group
Sorry?
1 and 8 might be straightforward.
I think Jean
We'll
wants
just
to.
deal with it.
Okay, all right. Well, condition 1 is to remove.
Do you have a second
one,
for?
which is-
Yes, okay. And you've just
Yeah.
mentioned why that is. That's pretty much a procedural issue anyway, because we determining that under the MRS. Anyone wish to speak against that item?
I didn't pick that up. That was Mr. Blue.
Yes.
Condition
Voted
8.
here on the minutes though. Condition 8. Yes, Mr. Birch.
Yeah, to include the option of 1% contribution to public art, or
Okay.
whatever the wording, standard wording is.
I think your policy actually allows for one or the other, but your condition doesn't allow for one or the other. It says shall be provided to. Okay. So the rewording then is prior to lodgement of building plans. The applicants shall either make a monetary contribution or submit plans to be approved by the Shire of Serpentine, Jarrahdale in accordance with. So that gives the option of one or the other. Is that?
Yeah, there might be some standard wording that the Shire has, but so yeah.
Well, if not, prior to the
add
lodgement
to-
of a building permit, the applicants shall either make a monetary contribution or submit plans of public art to be approved by the Shire of Serpentine, Jarrahdale in accordance with, etc., etc.
1% of the value.
Yes, yeah, the monetary contribution to equivalent to 1% of the value.
Sorry, through
Yes,
the
you-
policy sets a maximum cap as well, so monetary contribution with reference to the policy would
Yes.
ensure that
Okay.
it's all good.
Okay, so with that, we have a seconder for that. Yes, Lee, any discussion? If not, vote on it. Unanimous, thank you. And condition 5, Mr. Birch, you've moved to delete condition 5. You've mentioned your reasoning behind that. So you've moved that. Do I have a seconder?
Yes.
Okay, Lee. To speak to the item again, Mr. Birch.
I think I've pretty much covered it. The only other comment I was going to make was that with regard to the traffic lights, the suggestion that it bookends the town centre, that may well be the case, but I think that's very much falls in the not in the hands of the responsibility of a developer. That's an urban design issue that I think the Shire is rightly responsible. I don't think there's any nexus there, so I would. That's a valid reason for imposing the condition.
Okay, thank you. Lee, you wish to speak?
Look, I concur with what Mr. Birch has said. I can't see the justification for this. The proposal would fall over. I think the fact it is part of the town centre, we have lower speeds for most of a 24-hour cycle. There are a whole lot of reasons why I don't think that this condition is justified or appropriate in this instance. So for that reason, I'll be supporting that amendment.
Okay. Does anyone wish to speak against the? Yes.
As I said before, presiding member, and I'm really concerned about removing the acceleration lane. We've heard from Main Roads themselves talk about Walters Road from the south, and I think the key point here is if anyone takes the time to bother to look at Google Earth, you'll see that there's a single lane. There's a single lane of traffic heading north from the southwest highway and a slow down and turn left into this development. This recipe for disaster, and I want my comments recorded because I think this is going to cause a big issue for my residents. So I'm not going to say anything further, but I want to know that it's a concern. No deceleration lane is a big concern.
Okay. Councillor Mack.
Yeah, I'd just also like to acknowledge Mr. Birch's comment that there is a disparity between Main Roads and WAPC, and it is concerning, and I think we have a responsibility to probably err on the side of safety here. And I think there is a serious issue with the development going to increase that serviceability level of the intersection at Larson Road. It has been a very difficult and problematic intersection prior to the closure of Larson Road, and I fear this development will take us back to what was a situation that wasn't desirable. So I fully endorse condition 5 remaining.
Okay, it's up to me to make comment. I endorse the comments of the council in regard to the deceleration lane. I think that there is a need for some deceleration facility there. This proposal has the ability to draw a lot of traffic. It is totally car orientated. Sure, there'll be some spillover from the train station, but it's highly dependent on vehicles, and it's also dependent on vehicles entering primarily off the southwest highway, given that Larson Road will close. So I'm foreshadowing a motion I'm foreshadowing a motion to delete the traffic lights from the proposal, because I think that the cost, I don't think there's a nexus for the traffic lights as much as there is a nexus for the deceleration lane. So I'm proposing an amendment to the motion that's proposed, and that is to maintain condition 5 in regard to point 1, but delete the requirements for the intersection traffic lights at 5.2. So I think that there is certainly a lot of traffic that is maybe not modelled, or we don't have the information before us in regard to the hypergrowth that's occurring in Byford, Mundijong and so forth. Those areas will have their own traffic, their own town centres. They're all planned, they're master planned communities. So I think that this, the Byford town centre, whilst it's got a higher order of shopping, it will still, I think, draw primarily from the local Byford area. So I think that nailing a set of traffic lights on this particular proposal will well and truly kill it. I don't know about the deceleration lane. Some of the services may need to be maintained. The one power pole that's in the photo looks like it needs straightening very badly, so somebody might pick the tab up for that rather than the developer. However, so that's my comment on it. I don't see the nexus for the traffic lights. I think the downgrading of Larson Road is going to help quite a lot at that intersection. And given that most of the driver behaviour will be generated from the locality. When the through traffic on South Western Highway is reduced, then I think the traffic light is too much of an imposition on this particular proposal. So with that, I'll move an amendment to Mr. Birch's.
So the motion as it stands.
motion as
at
it
the
stands
moment Is to delete the whole entire condition unless the mover and seconder want to change. Then we will vote on it.
Can I speak? I'd like
Well,
to-
you can
I'd like
close.
to close debate. I want to stick with my amendment. It sounds like it's not going to get up, but I mean, talking about the safety issue, this is a slow speed environment, and I'm not sure how a left in at the proposed crossover or coming upon Larson Street and turning left there. I'm not sure whether there's any difference in the traffic safety issue there, particularly, I mean, certainly maybe for local residents, they will be familiar with it. Passing trade traffic, and you'll still get a fair bit of that, I expect. Well, I think they would hope they get some. But I said before, as a driver, people would expect they'd be looking out to get to a petrol station off the street the highway that they're in, and there is a pylon sign there, so I think it will be. And it's important that people are clearly directed to that entry. So yeah, I still feel that the plans as presented are acceptable, and that both the limbs of that condition be deleted.
Just before we vote on that, the applicant's just made a comment about dealing with that through the MRS approval.
Yeah, Mr. Presiding Member, if I may, just to assist you, the Planning Commission's recommendation has the deceleration condition 3. So given that MRS work should be under the MRS approval, Birch's proposal to delete condition 5 in its entirety should be acceptable to you if you wanted to retain the deceleration proposal.
Okay, thank you.
It's still in the MRS one.
Yes, that's right. Yes, so
The decisions have to align. So an unaligned approval under one, they should both reflect the same. So the Shire doesn't agree with that position.
MRS 1.
Well, that's how the delegation works.
okay,
So you need to vote on that
yep.
motion.
Okay, to delete condition 5 its entirety, I'll put the matter to a vote. All those in favour? Against? Okay, I'll now move the motion to delete point 2 from recommendation. Do I have a second? Yes, councillors, Mayor Coles, President Coles, I should say. Yes, I've mentioned my reasons behind it. I think that there's still a need for something in that area. Given the proximity of the Bowsers to the crossover, the entry to the fast food outlet, I think that's entirely, in my opinion, warranted to have a deceleration lane of some sort. It's in conjunction with the council. It doesn't have to be 70 metres. It can be a design issue that the council and the proponents can address. It only calls for a deceleration lane with a suitable design, so the cost may not as horrendous as previously thought. So, seconder, wish to speak to that?
I've said enough, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to the motion? If not, against? Yeah, councillor.
Okay, yeah, I guess my concern is still the removal of part one of this. I do hold some concerns that, sorry, the removal of part two, is that without having the traffic signals there, it is going to create a dangerous intersection. And I do believe that there is an onus on this particular development that will be upgrading the traffic at that intersection. So I would like to see it remain.
Okay. To speak against the motion to delete 5.2? If not, all those in favour? Thank you. Now, what was condition 8 we've already dealt with, condition 5. Still there, 5.1 is still there, 5.2 is still there. Okay. We now have the substantive motion to approve.
Chair, can I just clarify the wording of 16 now? Have we got some kind of wording on that? Something about rotate 90 degrees, is that right?
Faced east away from the highways or like.
To replace the being flipped in its design, being rotated 9 degrees to face east.
Yes, well, have we got to move this? That's just staying in, isn't it? No one objecting to that, mate.
The original motion had said to change the wording of 16 to removing being flipped in its design, stating being rotated 90 degrees to facing east.
Some work.
So that, yeah. Was that the second, that's what I'm trying to clarify.
Well, I don't think that was moved or anything, it was just left.
So we need
a mover.
It wasn't with that amendment.
Do you want to do it as a separate amendment?
We'll have to do it as a separate amendment, yes. All right, condition 16, we're looking at as a condition to clarify the wording. Move it. Stays as is.
I'm happy to move it.
Move it.
With the terms of moving it to 90 degrees to face east.
I'm not really quite sure myself what that means, but you have a second.
What? Well, I'm not sure what's facing east.
I don't know. That's why I wish to.
Sorry, I would take in the word from the director from when he suggested wording earlier. So
maybe to assist something like plans submitted for a building permit are to demonstrate the southeastern fast food takeaway development being rotated clockwise by 90 degrees and shifted to face east, with the drive-through entry being along the southern property boundary.
Okay. Once again, I'm not comfortable with changing that condition. I'm not going to be supporting it because I just think it's going to be a difficult one to design here, and
I agree.
we've already discussed that before. So we have a mover and a seconder. We've got a proposed wording. The mover and seconder. Do you wish to comment further on it?
Thank you, Mr. Presiding Member. The only comment I would make in relation to making that amendment to condition 16 was simply to allay any concerns, perceived or real, in relation to banking up and coming out to Southwest Highway. And I think moving that facility will achieve that. So that's the reason why I'd be happy to move the amendment to condition 16.
Okay. And I wish to speak against the item. against the proposed amendment?
Only that I am concerned about, I hold your concerns as well.
Yeah,
It may not be doable unless specific, within very specific and I'm going to play around with the design.
okay. Yes, Birch?
Yeah, Chair, look, I was going to support it, but if we've got a, I do hold concerns about designing something, you know, changing things. It's not a simple matter. And I do have reservations about that. I was prepared to accept it without the deceleration lane, but now we've got a deceleration lane, then yeah, I will oppose the amendment and foreshadow the deletion of that deletion altogether.
Okay, all right, and I'm also in favour of the condition 16. I think that the applicants have demonstrated that this can work. It allows for the traffic flow to occur. I think that it's a very unwise thing for us to be designing proposals that come before us. We deal with them as they are submitted. If we have got concerns and they're valid concerns, we either refuse them or defer the application for a further applicants to look at it. And I don't have anything that warrants deferring the application at this stage. The deceleration lane proposal will allow for some further stacking and queuing, and in that regard, I'm not supporting the amendment to condition 16. So, and I'll be moving to delete condition 16 if that's the case. So I'll put the proposed amendment to condition 16 to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Thank you. Okay, in regard to condition 16, as it reads, is to reorientate. So do we have anyone wishing to delete condition 16?
Well, I'll move that we delete the condition.
Okay. Seconder, Lee, we've discussed this at length. Any discussion further?
My only comment is that I appreciate what the administration is trying to do here, but I'm not entirely comfortable with the extent to which I understand what they're trying to do, but I think it's just I'm not convinced that it's entirely necessary. Yeah. I think the case has been established, and that it's perhaps a condition that's dubious, given the extent required.
Yeah. Okay. Any further discussion? If not, I'll put the amendment to delete condition 16 from the recommendation. All in favour? Against? 3-2. All right. Well, no further amendments other than the ones we've discussed and adopted. So we now have the standard motion to approve with the amendments we've discussed and voted on. All those in favour of the application? Against? 4-1. Thank you. Okay. 3.1. Before us. The mover and seconder. Urge. Seconder.
No second.
Yes, Lee.
In moving the motion, I'll ask the seconder if she agrees that we change condition 1 from 2 years to 4 years to be consistent
Yes,
with.
I absolutely agree. Yeah.
Okay.
And noting that I voted against the condition 3 previously, but which might look inconsistent, but we've had that debate, so.
We've had the debate and
I won't
you-
trouble you by raising it again, so yeah, that's all. And I think we've discussed and debated this thoroughly, so I've got nothing
Okay.
else to add.
all right, Lee.
Yeah, I agree with those sentiments.
Yeah, anyone else wish to speak for or against the motion? Everyone happy with the 4-year approval? And yes, okay, all right, well, I'll put the recommendation to approve, which will change to 4-year approval. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. I think we've had a good fleshing out of this particular application, and I think that it's understandable given its location and its impact on the locality and the concerns expressed by panel members. So moving on to the part of the agenda, which is part C, set application Supreme Court Appeals. They are not listed here, but they're on the website, I presume, yes. No general business. Then I shall close the meeting at 11:57 AM and thank everybody for their attendance and